being in order.
You need to say something.
The invitation, Travis. Can I get you to make the invitation?
Yes, sir. Let's stand, please. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together, Lord, as we come together and make decisions on behalf of this community, Lord. It's a pleasure. Send your blessings upon us, Lord. Make the right decisions for your service, Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We're looking for the approval of the agenda. I've already been asked to remove off the consent agenda item number 2, which deals with the capital equipment budget for the fire department. And I'd like to move that down to the business items. We made that number 6, or it's number 4.5.
Is there any requirement that business item number 1 be on the public business portion of the agenda? Is that something that can be in the consent agenda from now on?
That will be fine. If there's any questions about it, even before consent, you could ask a question about it, but that will be fine. In fact, we can move it there tonight if you choose to.
Would you like to move it to the consent agenda?
I would.
All right. Business item number 1, request to allow 2 speed limit signs to be installed on Bay Hill Road.
And Mayor, just to confuse it even more, the item number 3 on consent, that was a mistake, approval of the budget schedule. I think the idea was to have some discussion on that, so I'd like to move that back down to business item, whatever that number would be.
I don't think the city manager's allowed to take things off the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we, Mr. Mayor, that we move item number 3 off the consent agenda to new business.
Mayor, I'd like to add discussion pending legal matters as a closed session.
All right, you want to add it to the last business item?
That'll be fine.
All right.
Second that.
Okay. Did you want to read anything along with that?
No, sir.
Question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
What item on the business, which business item are we going to move the approval of the budget schedule to?
I'd probably make it number 1, so they could, you want to do it first or last?
1 is fine. That way you would keep the order. We'd be 1 through 7, then I think with the additions.
All right, I've got a motion to approve the agenda as we've made these changes.
Motion. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Okay. We've got a presentation for the annual audit report.
Good evening, council members. I have with me this evening, Phyllis Pearson. She is a partner with our auditor, Petway, Mills, and Pearson, PA, and she's going to present for the town our audit findings. My apologies to you. You were just given a printout, a hard copy of the audit.
This right here.
No. Do you have it? This is quite literally hot off the press. The audit was just completed a few days ago. Going forward in the years to come, we'll try to get you this report prior to the meeting to give you a chance to look at it. Without saying any more, I'll let Phyllis present the findings for us.
I could direct your attention to pages 5 and 6. This is the independent auditor's report, and this is the format under clarified auditing standards, and this is our attempt as a profession to better explain what we do. We have audited the statements, and this set of statements is the entire statements of the town. There's not any parts that have been left out. Your responsibility is for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and that includes the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. Our responsibility is to take the financial statements and the underlying records, and we do testing, we obtain audit evidence that these are valid numbers and that the financial statements are fairly stated. Then we issued an opinion, and that opinion states that we found the financial statements to be in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles and to fairly state the financial position of the town. This is called an unmodified audit opinion. In prior years, it would have been called an unqualified opinion, and it is a clean audit opinion, the highest level of opinion that an auditor will issue. On page 6, there are certain supplemental statements of the management's discussion analysis, the law enforcement officer's special separation allowance, and then the health care scheduling of funding progress. Those schedules, while we review them and we do certain types of inquiry and testing regarding those statements, we don't really do an in-depth audit, and as such, the profession prohibits us from rendering an opinion. That is the requirement of the GASB, which is the governing body that determines what the standards are for government units. So really, you won't ever see any auditor issue an opinion on those documents. Then we have also looked at and examined the supplemental schedules and the CFA, or Schedule of Federal and State Awards, and compared those to the underlying records, and we note that in relationship to the financial statements themselves, these schedules are also fairly stated. And then we have an additional paragraph required by government auditing standards because you receive more than $100,000 in governmental funding. That is an opinion on your compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, and grant agreements and other matters is fraud. And that is a modified opinion, actually, because there are two findings which we will discuss as we proceed through the report. Management's discussion and analysis is really the town's discussion of the financial statements. So I like to start with page 19. Page 19 is the statement of net position on the full accrual basis of accounting. Total assets were $75 million. Total liabilities, $25 million. Total net position.
I'm sorry, which page you want?
19 in the total column. Okay. Total net positions, $49,000. $49 million. Of the $49 million, $36 million is the difference between fixed asset and the related debt. So that's not liquid money and really doesn't reflect any money as far as making a decision about how to spend your dollars. On page 20 is the statement of activities. The town spent $37 million, had charges for services of $27 million, operating grants and contributions $494,000, total general revenues $9.4 million, so that there was a change in net position, or a loss, if you will, of $118,000. There is a prior year adjustment to the statements, which we're going to talk about, of $1.6 million. That's a reduction in fund balances, and that leads to the net position of $49 million. Page 21 is the governmental funds, and what is very significant about this statement is that it reflects your general fund. The governmental funds had $7.4 million in total assets. $4.3 million of that was the general fund. Total liabilities, $898,000. $379,000 was the liabilities of the general fund. There's a new category because you've adopted GASB 63 and 65 called deferred inflows of resources, which is really your property taxes receivable that are collected in 2013 but used in 2014. That's $104,000. And then there's the total fund balances of $6.4 million. The $3.8 million is the general fund. Reserved by state statute is $1.3 million, and your unassigned fund balance is $2.2 million. So that,
Where is that, the capital reserve fund line item on here?
capital reserve,
You know our,
unassigned fund,
our reserve fund.
okay, it's renamed unassigned fund balance. That happened a couple of years ago. That's the $2.2 million. That is the number that's monitored. It must be 8% of your prior year expenditures. And historically, in the last 2 or 3 years, the town's number has been somewhat weak. But if we go on to the next page, you can see that the fund balance actually increased about $2,000, which has kind of helped that situation. But still, this number needs to grow some to reflect the liquidity of the town. If we looked at the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, the governmental funds brought in $12.7 million, spent $12.8. There was an operating loss of $65,000. Then there are other financing sources of $49,000, which is really the sale of some fixed assets, and a prior year adjustment of $18,000, leading to $6.4 million in total fund balances. And if you would look at, go right ahead.
Unfortunately, this is the first I've seen of this.
Sure, okay, anything I can do.
Yeah,
Here,
so
any questions?
Well, I'm slow, so I have to go over this.
Okay.
So our funds coming into the town, revenue were $12,746,201, is that right?
That's right.
And that's from whatever we get funds from.
That's right, from property taxes, your intergovernmental funds, grants.
And then we spent $12,812,000
That's correct,
for a shortage of $65,000.
correct.
And then we made up that $65,000 by sale of capital assets.
40.
And then we deducted $16,000 from our reserve fund balance.
Well, actually, you've added 18 due to the prior year corrections. Okay. So the offset between the 18 and 16 is $2,000.
But if we were to continue that trend 10 years exactly like the last year, but we won't be accumulating extra funds. We'll be running a little short each year, just fractionally.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that number has to be a greater positive to accumulate funds.
Right.
Okay. Note that.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure.
On page 20, back to page 20, we had a change in net position of $118,673.
Right.
And then the figure we just looked at was negative $65,865. Tell me what the difference is between the change in net position, because it looks like it deals with revenue and expenses on both of them.
Okay, and it does. Pages 19 and 20 are full accrual accounting, meaning the depreciation expense is recorded, the compensated absence liability, the change in that liability, and other items that are not included in the fund financial statements. Pages 21 and 22 are modified accrual, meaning that we've left off the impact of depreciation expense, compensated absences, and other long-term and non-cash transactions. Okay. The statements that you really are concerned about with your decision-making is 21 and 22, because the North Carolina general statutes require you to keep modified accrual books for management purposes.
Would that be akin to like a 65, is that akin to like a net operating loss?
Correct. That's exactly what that is. If you're familiar with the term modified cash, that's governmental accounting calls modified cash modified accrual, meaning that some of the liabilities and some of the assets are recorded, but not everything. Okay. And if you would look at page 24, what's really significant is this measures how you have managed your general fund. There is a budget overage in the interest and other charges that's $7,658, and that, for your financial statements, is an immaterial overage, and there's not a finding regarding it, but in the future, you really need to make sure that your budgets don't have overages. So that is, if you do last-minute budgeting, sometimes you miss accruals, and that causes that to happen. On page 25, this is the electric and water and sewer fund. These are full accrual statements, so there's not any differences on the statement of net position and these statements because enterprise funds are required to be maintained on a full accrual basis. So the total assets are the $30 million, total current liabilities, $3 million, total non-current liabilities, $5 million, so the total liabilities are $8.1 million. Total net position, $22 million. You will note that the unrestricted fund balance is $10 million. And that is helpful if you're aware of that number in your management decision-making.
If I'm looking at $10 million, that's pretty evenly divided between electric and water fund, $5.3 million for electric and $5.1 for the water and sewer fund.
Mm-hmm.
And just in layman's terms, that's the surplus money they've collected.
That's correct.
In revenues that they can use.
That's the money that they can use. And the $12 million is the investment in plant and property, and with these two systems, that is not a very liquid asset. It would be hard to dispose of if you needed to generate cash.
You're talking about the asset, the capital asset side.
The capital asset side.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that. But your unrestricted, what you call unrestricted, we'd call cash in the bank, basically.
That's right.
How do you determine the value? In other words, 12 million?
It's the difference between the land and other assets minus the depreciation, minus the capital debt, if you will, long-term debt that relates to the property.
And
that gives you net.
That number is not right. Because if you've got a depreciation schedule, let's say 30 years on real estate, and that plant's 30 years old, from an accounting viewpoint, that plant's worth zero.
Right.
Where in reality, it does have some value to it. So that's kind of a little misleading.
But these statements are historical costs, so any fair value numbers are not considered. And you could conceivably have a piece of property that the accounting records show at zero value that's worth a lot more, because if you had a willing buyer, you would have a fair market value for it.
They don't count old stuff a lot, but it might be worth a lot.
Exactly. Okay, on page 26 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund net position. Total operating revenues were $24 million. Total operating expenses, $23 million. So the operating income was $567,000. Total non-operating revenue, which is your debt service cost, was a negative number of $178,000. And there was a loss on some fixed assets of $9,500. So the change in net position was $379,000. Then the prior year adjustment reduced the fund balance $1.6 million, so that the ending net position was $22 million. The prior year adjustments really lead into a finding, because in my professional literature, even if a prior year adjustment is corrected prior to the end of the year because you changed the prior year numbers, the auditor is required to write that up as a finding. And these prior year adjustments are resulting because in previous audits, the reconciliation process that should have gone on for cash, fixed assets, the capital projects, and the utility buildings and utility ARs were not done properly. And early on in the springtime, you had an interim financial officer that I had a lot of discussion with about how to bring the subsidiary documentation into agreement with the general ledger. because the general ledger is the books of account and the financial statements are generated off that document. That's where these reductions and reallocations are coming in, is because capital projects particularly weren't recorded properly in prior years. And then in the utility billings, the process of doing a monthly reconciliation to the general ledger really wasn't happening the way it's supposed to. So you've implemented some good procedures, and those procedures were implemented based on our prior finding, but you're seeing the financial impact, and as the process goes on, you may see some additional prior year adjustments because it takes on the average about 3 years to get a set of books and reconciliation processes to work properly.
So this negative revenue in electric fund of 479, is that reflecting the redistribution of previous capital improvements?
Okay, it is capital improvements and billings, especially the utility billings. If you've got a subsidiary ledger that shows you this is what you billed all your customers, and if that number comes out to $1 million at the end of the month, you should have a general ledger posting that says credits.
That is correct.
That's $1 million. Well, that process never really worked like it was supposed to, and now that they've got it working the way it's supposed to, it's showing the impact, and you show it as a prior year adjustment so you don't see an impact on current year revenues and expenses.
So if I look at the electric fund column, and it shows, it looks to me like the electric fund lost money.
It did lose money. And
the water made money of roughly $1 million, and the electric lost money of roughly 1.3 million.
That is very correct. And there is a note agreement, a revenue bond agreement, that requires you to meet certain debt service coverage ratios. That number is supposed to be 120% of your net income. You're actually at 63%. I'm sorry, operating income. You're at 63%. So there's a finding about that. And the solution is to either reduce some expenditures, increase rates, or transfer money from the general fund or the water and sewer fund to support the electric fund. So that's something you're going to have to deal with in your budgeting processes in the next few months.
Were you and I wasn't here last year, I'm newly elected. Were you doing the books last year?
We did the audit last year. And
Did the audit last year reflect this same thing?
No, it did not. And
do we get a refund?
Well, it did. Okay, the recommendations, our recommendations about reconciling the subsidiary documentation to the general ledger really has resulted in these prior year adjustments. But the debt coverage ratio was met last year, which is just a timing issue. Notice that your depreciation is $704,000. That influences some of the calculations. And then the interest charge itself.
Is that a one-time expense?
No, it's not. It's ongoing.
So you did our books last year. Could this change be because our staff didn't give you the proper numbers? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, let's put it more like the town did not have the proper procedures to reconcile documentation in place.
So we didn't have the procedures to figure out what we were doing?
That's the best way to look at it, because it really is an internal control matter. But you've had continual turnover in your finance officer, and that contributes to it as well. But the debt service ratio, this is a calculated thing that's calculated every year, and last year you made the calculation, and this year you didn't.
But you're satisfied that this year and ongoing, all things being equal, you've caught all the big errors, and they should be accurate going forward.
That's right. But it's, there is always the possibility that there's some unknown, but I do feel like this year's went a lot better than last year, because last year a lot of documentation we would request, it just didn't exist like it should have. And that's why there was a finding that cash wasn't working. It took a while to get cash reconciled. It really wasn't being done monthly like it should be done. And then this reconciliation process from the subsidiary ledgers to the general ledger just wasn't as strong as it should be.
Do you think, and I know the audit you've done here is, I know it's comprehensive in some respects, but it's limited in its purpose. Do you think our town would be benefited by some more comprehensive audits in various departments to?
I wouldn't think audit as much as training of your staff on how the reconciliation process works. You know, your set of books is as strong as the people running it.
Right.
And additional training might be a more solution than audit. And it's actually more expensive. You should know that too.
Right.
But I think you would get more out of it having somebody come in and say, this is the way this is done. And in my personal experience, that works best.
If I may, in Greg's defense, I've had my chief treasurer and my CFO, two people, go over to the finance department in town of Smithfield and showed some of y'all reports on it. He's was behind on a lot of things, and he's working at it. But it's going to take a lot of catching up. I mean, they have really got a lot to get going on.
If I could say in Greg's defense, he really, we really worked the majority of the audit with another person. Greg's coming in at the end with a lot of things and procedures to put in place.
We're counting on you, Greg.
She did say the procedures are getting better compared to last year.
They were better than last year.
No, it needs a major,
But it's better, but we are improving, and we're getting the...
not enough.
Well, I get there's some things I don't particularly understand, and it's probably not germane to your presentation, but we've got an electric department that we say is losing $650,000 a year, when we've got electric rates that are in some categories are through the roof. I mean, we need some type of analysis of that department to figure out why.
This statement shows the depreciation expense, and $704,000 of that $679 came from that depreciation expense.
What you said earlier, that was a consistent number. It wasn't just a one-time.
That's not a one-time number. On a full accrual basis, that is...
So on a cash flow basis, we were 50,000 to the good then.
That's correct. Yes, that's what I'm getting at, that on a cash flow basis,
Yeah, but
it's a little better.
depreciation's a real number.
But it's a real number, and it's a real use of the asset.
The depreciation wasn't in 2002.
You got a problem because your reserves are required by law to be dramatically higher than what they are.
That 704,000.
Said we're 63%, we're supposed to be 120%.
No,
The way I understood it.
that is the annual charge, basically.
And they had that correct.
Yeah. If I could say that, I read it, that you're responsible for the implementation and design of internal control that's sufficient to permit the preparation of financial statements. What that is really about is the tone at the top is what dominates a control structure. And the stronger your approach, the more results you get from the financial operation.
That's good advice. We'll make sure to do the right thing. All right, moving along.
Okay. If we could look at the budget to actual statements for the electric and water fund. Electric starts on 63. Basically, it shows that your net income, considering interest as an expense, and your capital outlay was $2,952, and then, of course, we go through the reconciliation to get back to the $646,000. So you can see the change from the modified accrual basis to the full accrual basis.
I'm sorry, post-employment benefits, what is that? I'm not...
Okay, sure, my pleasure. Okay, whenever you have in place a policy that requires you to pay health insurance and other types of fringe benefits to employees when they retire, that's called post-employment benefits. It is a growing liability as long as you provide it. You have an actuarial study done, and the liability set up, and it's an additional expense every year. That was a GASB that 3 years ago we did not record, and since it's been being recorded, a lot of towns and counties have reviewed their post-employment benefit options and cut them back or eliminated them, because as long as you offer that fringe benefit, this number continues to grow as your population ages.
Especially when you don't fund it as you go.
And nobody funds it.
That's right, that's right.
It's mostly unfunded. And you also have a pension benefit for law enforcement officers that affects the general fund in the same way.
But that's a state mandated.
That's state mandated, and it never grows like a health insurance does. Health insurance is measured at the current market increase every year. So if it increases 30%, and that's pretty much, your increase for health insurance has been between 20 and 30% in the last 3 years, each year. So that's the kind of increase you're seeing.
One quick question on that post-employment benefits. Am I right, that's only for this one department?
That's for that one department. Water is not, it was a $6,400. And, well, the total, let's look at the total liability. If you looked at, look at page 55. You have to get it off the page as you go, you would have to contribute $973,000 in 2013 into a fund, a fiduciary fund, for post-employment benefits. The last time the liability was actuarially determined was on December 31st, 2012, and the unfunded liability is $8.5 million. And you can see how it's changed over time.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to ask, she's given some good information here that I can absorb all at one time here at this meeting. Would it be helpful if we could have a special meeting to discuss this furthermore?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
to educate, definitely educate me on some of her information she's telling me to bring me up to date to where we lack.
We require, won't require, but I think it's a great idea that everybody really understand it. You don't have to be an accountant, but you should be able to point at most numbers, understand where it's going from.
If that's a motion, I second it.
That was a motion.
Well, and I'll get a little discussion here. Greg, are you up to doing this on your own, or do we need to bring in this young lady?
I think it would be best for all to be here to answer questions.
All right, I'll go with that.
We'd be fine with that.
Well, I got, any particular times you guys want to try to shoot for? Weekends, nights, weeknights?
We discussed that.
I think we need to,
Liver disease.
All right.
need to work on that.
Okay, well, I got a motion and a second just to have a meeting. We'll let the town manager pick the time and place and get these guys that everybody's agreeable to. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, we got some more billing hours in. You want to stop right now on this?
I do have one question. If you'll let me ask one more question. Sure. We have effectively a net operating loss of $68,000 this past fiscal year.
In your general government funds.
And yet, our fund balance increases from roughly 8% to roughly 20%. I'm not so sure I really understand that, other than it's just moving numbers around.
It's allocating a capital project to the correct fund did that. Okay.
What capital project?
It's one of those prior year adjustments.
In other words, we weren't in bad a shape.
So if I may, and just a question more than a comment. Also on the fund balance, difference between the last, say, 2 or 3 years and this year where it significantly increased. Also, the expenditures going down for these last 2 years would have a significant impact on that too. That is, you've got the same amount or not a similar amount, you've got a slightly increasing available amount of revenue. But if you're balancing that against a lower cost, lower expenditures, that's going to, with a similar amount, that's obviously going to make your available fund balance number go up.
Would it be helpful if we did a 3-year comparison?
I was going to ask, you don't have any comparisons for year-to-date or previous years and percentage change?
We could,
That would be
outside the
great.
report, we could do
If
that.
you could do that as a summary sheet attached as a separate summary, just by department, just a very broad glossy one, not by individual items.
Okay.
Then you can see the trends.
Okay, we can do
That'd be
that.
super.
Okay. Okay.
And before you get out of here, next year, when we, if you're still employed by this town and get the contract to do it, can you write in the contract that you will have a set time that we can get this maybe a week in advance of the meeting and request that? We'll write that into the contract, and you'd have to have it ready in time, so we'd have more notice than.
Sure, I understand perfectly.
We were a little late getting the audit completed this year.
Every auditor is late getting their audit completed. Unless you write in the contract, tell them they have to do it by a certain time, there's a penalty. It always puts you off.
This meeting in 5 another month, so that's why we've got.
It's a lot to digest at one time.
I understand perfectly.
All right. Go ahead.
I think for the citizens that are here, I think we should at least let a reader with the findings.
Oh, yeah, fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think, let's finish
Yeah, let's
the
finish
presentation that you have tonight, and I think we need to have a deep dive into this at a later time.
Okay. All right, if you would look at page 74, as I said, there are 2 findings. And one of those deals with the prior year adjustments that were uncovered during the process of trying to strengthen the financial statements. And the finding resulted because of the failure to properly reconcile cash, fixed assets, revenues, accounts receivable, and customer deposits to subsidiary ledgers. And as you brought in new financial people, that process started the way it's supposed to work, and those errors were identified. And we would recommend that you have a policy that requires monthly reconciliations to subsidiary documentations, which is basically what you've got roughly started, but strengthen that process. And then in the electric fund, the terms of the debt agreement, as far as remaining, recording being able to maintain a 120% debt coverage ratio. The town did not meet that requirement. The debt coverage ratio was 63%, and the recommendation is to monitor the fund operations more closely. Maybe you can reduce expenditures, and at the same time consider rate increases. And you can also, which is not in the finding, considering transfers from a fund that can support the electric fund some to help build that ratio back up. And that's the findings.
Any questions? All right, well, thank you for your time. I think we'll be seeing more of you. At this time, I'm going to open up the council meeting for citizens' comments. It's really loud. Anybody in the public who wants to make a brief statement under 3 minutes, I've been told. Is there anybody here who'd like to make a citizen's comment at this time? All right. Okay, well, now we're going to move into the public hearings. Before we begin the public hearings, if there's anyone who wants to speak during that public hearing, will they stand up and our town clerk is going to swear you in. Is there anybody going to speak? Or might think they might want to speak? Well, I need a motion to go into it.
I move we
You'll stand up in case they have a question to ask, obviously you'll be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I move we open public hearing, Mayor.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit to operate a pest exterminating service on property located within the B3 zoning district. The property considered for approval is located on West Market Street, approximately 230 feet southeast of the intersection with Whitley Drive. Let me orient you on the property map. Town of Smithfield, Moose River, US 70 West. As we head out of town, the property is located approximately at the end of my finger. If you'll recall, there is a soccer field out there which the town leases for the property for the purpose of the recreational park. This is the actual building. It was done in C&J Carpets a number of years ago. For the older council members that were here last year, we had a request for a conditional use permit for lawn service on the property earlier. And what you see right here is the corner of the top lot, and this is Henson's Creek in the corner of their property over here. It's immediately across the street from Bullitt Brothers Logging Industrial Equipment Company. Let's see, the site data is a 0.65 acre site. It's currently zone B3. In the past, is currently vacant. In the past, it has been retail carpet sales and building supply. It was there, or home furnishing supply, excuse me. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to operate an exterminating service on property located within the B3 business district. In the Code of Ordinances in the table of uses, it defines that all exterminating services are by conditional use permit, which means the council has to approve it. There does not appear to be any environmentally sensitive areas on the property considered for this action that include floodplains or designated wetlands. However, the proposed parking is in close proximity to an existing ditch that's on the property, which is adjacent to the town recreational facility. To the north, the zoning is B3, and the use is office and retail. To the south, it's heavy industrial, and it's a former lumber mill, Keener Lumber Company. To the east, it is B3, which is zoned, and it's being used currently as the community park. And to the west, it's also heavy industrial, and it's also the former lumber mill. And I know everybody orients and thinks that 70 West runs east-west. It doesn't. It almost runs north-south there, so that's the reason why this is a little bit confusing. Staff analysis. Michael Johnson is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for the exterminating service at the proposed West Smithfield location. The previous use of the building was carpet sales and warehousing of a new product and a change in use to an exterminating service would trigger compliance with the parking and landscape requirements. The consistency with the strategic plan. The proposed B3 zoning district and uses permitted in that district are consistent with the strategic growth plan. The consistency with the Unified Development Ordinance. An exterminating service is permitted use within the B3 zoning district with a valid conditional use permit issued by the town council. However, in accordance with the Town of Smithfield Unified Development Ordinance, Article 18, extermination services shall provide a minimum of 3 parking spaces per 100 square feet of gross floor area, and warehousing shall provide 1 space per 1,000 square feet. The applicant has stated that approximately 2,000 square feet of the existing building would be used for office. The remaining 5,000 square feet will be used as warehouse space. At these rates, the applicant will be responsible for providing 11 parking spaces. 9 of those spaces will be outside, 2 will be located in the garage bay. Compatibility with surrounding land uses. An exterminating service at this location would not pose a compatibility issue with the surrounding uses, given it is located on a very busy commercial corridor and not immediately adjacent to residential homes. However, the location is adjacent to a public park and should be landscaped according to minimum requirements from the UDO. Signs, there is an existing off-site advertisement sign, a billboard located on the site, and property will also qualify for an on-site freestanding ground sign in accordance with the ordinance. Fire protection will be by the town of Smithfield. Project should pose no impacts on schools nor on parks and recreation. Access to the property will be from US 70 West Market Street. Water and sewer will be the town of Smithfield, and electric provider will be Duke Energy. The Planning Department's recommendation: upon receiving testimony by the applicant and comment from the Planning Board, planning staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit request to allow for an extermination service on the property within the B3 zoning district, with the condition that the property is used strictly for the exterminating services and that a minimum of 11 parking spaces, 9 exterior spaces, and 2 interior spaces are provided prior to the operation of the building. The Planning Board's recommendation: as of January the 2nd, 2014, the Planning Board unanimously voted to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for the exterminating service. The Town Council is now requested to review the petition and make a decision in accordance with the finding of fact for a conditional use permit requested to allow for an exterminating services on property located within the B3 district. Attached on pages, the next several pages are the conditional use permit application finding of fact criteria for your consideration. There are 4 items in there, and you're asked to take action on those items. Stand open for questions.
Well, first, are there any comments for Paul from the citizens here about zoning? Any comments from the council? Any questions? Well, if there's no comments from the citizens or the council, I'm going to look for a motion to close this public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. All right, now we need to go for the finding of fact.
I move that we adopt findings of fact 1 through 4, adopt A, approval on each finding of fact.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I believe that passes.
So we don't need to specify about the parking spaces as requested by the planning department recommendation.
That's in the next motion of those. Now I move to approve the conditional use on the conditions set forth by Mr. Ember.
I
7
second.
parking places.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. All right, items on the agenda, on the business items.
Dead body.
And Paul, did you, oh yes. Did we move you to number 1?
Great. I think you need to do the consent agenda first, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, the changes we've talked about.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now,
Just close some discussion. And yes, we're number 1. The next business item, you did move the budget schedule.
okay.
In place of the Chief Scott. And that material will be on page 54 from the consent agenda. If everybody's found the budget schedule, what you have before you is a proposed budget schedule for this upcoming budget cycle. And of course, this will be to adopt next year's fiscal year 14-15 budget. And I think you'll see it looks familiar to the process we went through last year, except what I did in the middle portion, the March 17th through April 29th, approximately a month, 5 weeks. I've left open to the council, depending on how it wants to proceed, the actual meeting schedule and the meeting or lack thereof between council staff about how you want to proceed, once you get a draft proposed budget. So that's where I need some direction, and you can wait. You can do it later. The other dates about the adoption and the target date for the adoption around June 10th, that's just to meet the statutory requirements and production of the actual recommended budget. Those are just to meet our either our ordinance or state law requirements to have that document before you and ready for discussion, public review, and also later adoption in June. As I think most of you understand, we have to adopt the budget before the end of June, before June 30th. Typically, we try to adopt it in the middle part of June, the first week through the third week. We try to adopt the final budget. And of course, we have to have about a 10-day advertising period to advertise the budget that we're actually going to adopt. So there's a little bit of time there that we're trying to factor into this process. And Mayor, with that, if there's any direction at this time, if not, if you adopted the general budget schedule that's here, you still have time to set meetings, add meetings, or certainly amend this budget schedule at the council's pleasure.
Any discussion?
My only comment would be, last year, we sort of had to drop back and punt after a month's work. I'm just wondering if it might be helpful if we have a preliminary budget meeting between the council and the manager to discuss what we would like to see in the upcoming budget.
I think that's a great idea.
Is that a motion? I'll second.
That's a motion.
Second.
All right. And we'll ask the manager to try to set a time in early February.
It would be helpful if we could maybe set it, maybe right after we talk to the auditor.
Yep.
That's good.
All right. Got a motion and a second. All in favor of having a preliminary budget session early? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Oh, we should set that up. Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 2, consideration.
So I'm clear on this, we put a freeze on this schedule so after we have that meeting.
I think we have to approve, that's a good point. Do we have to, are we required to approve this
Well,
budget now?
no, you don't have to, but I mean, just the more notice everybody has, the better. I mean, obviously, internally, we have to keep working on our budgets just to kind of get things moving so that we have enough time to, put it together, but that won't change depending on the direction of the council at that meeting. That will only help that situation, I think, so.
I think I just leave it like it is. We can change it later if we need to.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman, Mr. Harris. Police Chief, item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The police department is requesting to submit a grant through the Governor's Highway Safety Program. This is a grant that we have submitted in previous years. It's to purchase equipment that is authorized by the Governor's program. What we have purchased before is video cameras for our squad cars. We purchased 4 of those a year ago, paying 50% of the match, all of the match, which is 50% of the total price through forfeiture monies. We're requesting to do the same thing with this grant. However, we're only looking to purchase 3 cameras instead of 4. Total value of the grant is $18,000, with the Governor's program paying $9,000 and the police department paying $9,000 out of its forfeiture money. This is a request to submit an application. We will come back to you again if the grant is approved to ask for acceptance of that grant and be able to move forward.
I move we approve it.
Second.
I have a question. It's okay.
Now for discussion, go ahead.
Chief, can you tell us the 4 that you currently have? Are y'all using them? Are they successful?
We are. We actually have 6. The town council authorized us to purchase 2 back in 2010. Then we purchased 4 more through this grant. By purchasing 3 more, all of our line squads at the patrol officers drive will have a camera in them. We've used them for multiple times for court purposes, especially with DWIs, as well as people who make confessions that they don't realize they're on tape. Makes court go a whole lot smoother. We've also used them multiple times when people come in to file complaints claiming that something occurred that either did or did not occur. It makes it a whole lot simpler to go back and look at the video camera and hear what was said or what occurred. So we use them on a regular basis.
Chief, how much money do you have in the drug forfeiture fund?
About $35,000 today.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, discussion closed. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, number 3, naming a new road grade and crossings. Paul Emblem.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr. Imler to join us also in this conversation. And this is presented on page 71 of your packet material. And there's a map in there. I know it's kind of small, but it actually, I think it kind of works. You can see the map, and that's the one Mr. Imler's holding up there for you. In essence, I'm going to have Mr. Imler keep me accurate on this, because some of this is well before my time. But if you look at the new road portion there, is the yellow portion there all the way around. And then, of course, that last portion that Mr. Imler just touched is the existing Industrial Park Drive. Back at the beginning of this project, or at some point during the project approval process, that yellow portion from Outlet Center, well, not the other part, Paul, there you go. That portion go all the way through to the top part there, Paul, all the way through up to about right there, was destined to be named with the new name of Outlet Center Drive was the name, and that was part of the project approval. The idea originally was that the other portion coming in from 70 was going to extend and go back through there. And that was going to be more of a straight shot of a road. And so in theory, that may be named something different. I don't know. And that was never technically named. As you know, that portion is not going to be built right now. The plans aren't in place, and that's probably many years away before that will be built. So we still have the Outlet Center Drive portion. That is part of the project approval that has been named up to that corner. And what we would ask, or really recommend, is that the whole yellow portion all the way back now, there you go, Paul, all the way down to the existing outlet there on 70, kind of near the Golden Corral, also be named Outlet Center Drive to make it one coherent road that everybody knows where it is. It's one road in, one road out. There won't be confusion. I think the only maybe complicating factor might be in, let's be optimistic, 5 or 8 years, if that road is ever built and it connects up to Venture Drive, you would have to come up, I think, probably with a different name entirely for that portion of the road. I guess you could call it the Outlet Center Drive Extension. Sometimes that's confusing, or just a completely different name. So that would be the only complicating factor, I think, for those who might just cut through from the entrance there by Golden Corral and the Hess Station, going straight to Venture Drive and not going to the Outlet Center at all. I think, we kind of make plans for what's here and now. I think that Outlet Center connection, consistent name, would be easy to follow and good for our merchants. Because you also got to remember that a lot of people are going to be looking to get into that Outlet Center. And if the road there by the Hess Station is called something different and they're not coming off the expressway, they're looking to find Outlet Center Drive, and let's say that little stretch there is named Smithfield Boulevard or something, they won't really know how to get to Outlet Center Drive. It won't be a good, easy turn in for them. So we're just trying to simplify that, and kind of in the future, we'll name that road something accordingly.
I'm looking for a motion to rename the road Outlet Center Drive.
I make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Is it all the way to Selma? Is it called Outlet Center Drive already?
It will be.
Okay.
I mean, what's basically we know is Industrial Park Drive? Yeah. That's right.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Good job, Mr. Emily.
number 4, mid-year financial report.
Thank you, Mayor. Briefly, in my manager's report, which you've got on your desk, you'll really see attached to that, the end of my report, is kind of a more specific mid-year report. And on that, I've got the departments that weren't included in your packet before, which would be kind of the general administrative departments of the general fund, non-departmental as a department, debt service department, and finance departments. I think you've already had a chance to review all of the individual departments from police, fire, public works, electric, all of their mid-year reports. And so really, this is just a chance just to summarize where we are in this budget year. And most of the department heads are here. If you have any specific questions about projects or capital expenditures, we can certainly address those if it's an item by item. We did not do this last year. I don't know about what the practice was of the town. Just thought it was a good time to kind of take a deep breath and look at where we are in our budget year. And the general report is that we're in good shape. I think you'll notice department by department, most of our expenses are a little bit under what would typically be the 50%. We're halfway through the year. If you're right to the dollar on your expenditures, you'd be at 50%. You can see we're typically below that in most departments. The ones that we're above it a little bit is mostly because they're either capital purchases or contractual expenditures that were just made in the early part of the fiscal year. Not a month by month. We're a little bit high on gas or on other monthly expenditures that are running high. All of those, or virtually all of those, seem to be running right at the budget line, or most of them are well below the budget line on the expense side. Also saying a lot of, on the revenue side, several of the revenues are just a little bit under the projected revenue, but the under expenditure is greater than the under revenue. So we still net out, I'd say we're ahead some 2 to 3% on the overall net gain with the budget at mid-year right now. A couple comments, because you haven't seen it on the general admin departments. I want to just let you know on that page attached to my report, you see in the general government that we're 30.14%. I'm sorry.
Page are you on?
It's on this one. Looks like that. It's about page 3 or 4 of my manager's report that was handed out tonight. Right there. There you go. You were close to it.
That's in
No, that's in there you go. That's it. Everybody see that? On the general government, we're at 30%, just above that instead of 50. Non-departmental, we're at 43%. Debt service, we're at 58%. And finance, we're at 42%. All good numbers, except for the debt service, which again is at 58%. And really the quick explanation on debt service is many of the debts just happen to time out. And instead of a monthly payment, they are basically an annual payment, and some of them were just due in that July through December time frame instead of the later time frame. So really, we are in good shape with that. And one of the loans, which I describe here in a little bit more detail, if you recall, we refinanced some of that pretty heavy debt on the SHRAC. There were 2 large bonds there that we refinanced. And over the refinancing amortization schedule, we are going to have some pretty hefty savings over the course of that entire refinancing. We had estimated what the first year would be. We're a little bit too optimistic in that first year, so we're not saving as much in our first year, but we're still going to save the exact amount over the course of that. I think really we're going to save a lot in this next and upcoming fiscal year. So it's saved this year, saved next year. In this case, we're saving a little bit more next year and a little bit less than we had budgeted for this fiscal year. The good news, and unrelated debt, is that on the Wells Fargo short-term loan with the Crossings project, there's probably a net gain of approximately $80,000 on that in terms of money reserves. That's going to help us out and get us well ahead of the game in terms of that whole debt service schedule. So you take the $35,000 probably shortcoming on the SHRAC refinancing, and you take the $80,000 kind of reserve balance that's going to be applied toward that debt, we're coming out ahead about $45,000. I want to make sure you understood that. And again, that won't be reflected until we get through the whole budget year, but it's generally good news. And so again, that's why numbers can be deceiving when you look at them just compared to a month-to-month track, but I feel pretty good about it. If you have any questions, I know there's a lot of paper on these from the department heads. I appreciate their work in summarizing their departments. Some of those were very difficult, but I think it gave everybody a good chance to take a hard look at their numbers. And you see the details. Some of them are program generated, some of them are more capital purchase generated. If you have any questions for me or the department heads, we'll be happy to address those at this time.
And not to pick on the electric department, but page 92 of your agenda you've given us says your mid-year financial updates for the electric fund. And we just got a report from the auditor that it's revenue negative, but you're showing, I don't think we've raised electric rates. So here we are halfway, 6 months into 2013, or well, your year, 6 months into it. And you're showing that you're revenue neutral, is that right? Shouldn't there be a negative in there?
No, sir. I mean, that's a budget year to budget year. And I think you'll find when we drill deeper down with the auditor that a lot of those, quote, losses from the electric fund were basically just prior year adjustments that were in large amounts. There were transfers in the electric fund that were not made in prior years that were owed to the general fund, and they were caught up.
And there was an adjustment made, if you read, they made some pretty substantial adjustments going into this audit that definitely would have caused the year-end figures of last June to be substantially lower. This is basically just for this fiscal year. It's nothing to do with last year, right?
That's right. That's right. This is just how are we doing this year in our budgeted revenues. And
I may have misunderstood, but I asked her if that was accurate. Those losses would continue forward, and she said yes.
The depreciation.
Depreciation, which is a loss.
This doesn't include that.
Right.
That's my point.
Yeah, this does not include depreciation here. But to your point, yes.
I understand what you're saying.
But from a cash standpoint, if you go back and look at last year, and take depreciation out, we're fine.
That's right. Departmental reports are cash flow report, not accounting.
Any questions for Carl?
again, if there's any other departments too, you have a specific question, I'll be happy to address those.
Well, I just had a couple of questions that's not really related to the budget, and actually for Parks and Rec, I guess, Gary. There's mention in here a couple of times about replacing scoreboards at the community park, if there's money left over. What's the status of those scoreboards? I'm just curious. I mean,
the scoreboards that are out there now, there's two of them that are non-color, so technology, the old light bulb, sockets of brass, getting replaced, we're looking to replace it with LED. I think there's some money from the technical contract that we have left over
and I don't know what the agreement is on the Little League park, but is there something we can do about the scoreboard out there? So that would be included in, okay.
Gary, are you trying to incorporate it in the Pepsi contract to help with scoreboards, or is the money left over?
And then the new contract that will come up, there will be some money left for that too. There will money left over from that contract from the scoreboard.
And then one more question, Gary, and then I'm done. It mentions for capital outlay, we were at 98% because we had, bought some pool equipment. Do you know what that was?
The thing that goes across the pool with the balance.
Oh yeah, okay, I've seen it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
I just would note on page 93, I know we had talked about this, but I did not remember that biggest monthly expense within the line item is for meter reading services, from between $16,000 and $17,000 a month. I didn't realize that was that much. Just an observation.
Any other questions? We had moved from the consent agenda the fire department capital equipment budget amendment, and we put it back into the business amendment, and that would probably fall right into this. So let's, with everybody's permission, let's go ahead and move to that, and we'll call that 4.5, I guess, on our agenda here. That's a consideration for a motion authorizing the fire department capital equipment. Patrick Harris. We'll come back to that.
Thank you, Mayor. Gentlemen, really, the fire department is really requesting an adjustment in what we originally proposed to you back 18 months ago when we started working on the budget. Essentially, currently approved in our capital budget is $5,000 for pager replacement and $4,500 for rescue equipment. And what happened is over a period of time, in looking at our hose testing, the amount of hose that was failing, we've got some nozzles that are giving us some problems. And so in talking with the officers and meeting and discussing this, we felt like that perhaps a better utilization of this funding would be to change the mode of that and purchase large diameter hose and nozzles. It's one of those things that we're trying to operate within the confines of our budget. I mean, I could make the original purchases. We could pay the pager equipment, the rescue equipment, and then rely on a contingency to come back in front of the board and ask for more money to buy hose if we get to a point where we're in a critical situation. But we felt perhaps it would be a better utilization of that funding to just shift that over. The pagers are hanging in there pretty well. It doesn't make the need go away, but we felt like that hose was certainly more of a priority at this point than the.
Well, Patrick, that was one of the reasons I wanted this item off the consent agenda, is because the pagers and the rescue equipment seem pretty important at the budget sessions. And are we going to be back 2 months from now for a budget amendment to do the pager and rescue equipment? Is that what we're looking at, really? I know what we're doing, what you want to do today is just switch from the items we budgeted to something new, but are we really going to be back to add that money back in?
Well, Councilman, with all due respect, we're operating a department on a tremendous amount of aging equipment. Our average truck age is about 14 years old. And so some of the large diameter hose that we're using was purchased in 1991 when the ladder truck was bought new. So what we try to do is take an educated guess. I mean, our budget has taken tremendous cuts, and we're trying to stay within those confines. I wish I had a crystal ball that could tell you 18 months from now that this will break and this won't break. I'm trying to be as proactive as we can and stay within our budget confines of what the council has approved for us. So to answer your question, I don't anticipate that we would need that. I think our pagers are holding together fairly well. We're doing a lot of repair work on those. And I think we're going to be fine until the next budget year. But it's one of those things that it's a day-to-day thing when you're dealing, and I'll give you a good example. Our rescue truck, which is our main rescue one, is in the shop right now. Well, that's not unusual for our trucks because we have a lot of shop time. But this one, we started off with a leak in a pump. Now we found out that the pump housing is damaged because of just normal wear and tear, rust. The truck's getting some age on it. So now we're having to make some repairs to that. So it's, 18 months ago, I had no way of knowing that. I mean, I
understand that. And I'm not getting on you. I mean,
yeah, I understand.
We prepared a budget based upon what you told us.
Sure.
And I know you don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
But I'm just trying to get the lay of the land 6 months down the road, too. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what it sounds to me like is we're really needing to do both. What we originally thought we were going to need to do, plus the hoses. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
In a perfect world, we'd do both, and if you'd like to fund both, I'll be glad to take both. But I was trying to stay within the confines of our budget and not come before the council and ask for additional funding.
Do we need the pager replacement?
I think we can get by without it. I think we can.
And can we get by without the rescue equipment?
What is the rescue equipment that we're not going to purchase?
Well, rescue equipment is there's shelf life to a lot of those things, ropes and carabiners and different. So typically what I've done for the last 10 years is include some money each year to keep our rescue complement up to date. And so, we've looked at everything. We've done some updating. We've changed out some bags. Our ropes are in pretty good shape. I've kind of gone back through and looked at that. There are some things that we had planned on using that $4,500 for, like an additional cutter for brake pedals. We're doing a lot of vehicle extrication now. That one cutter would eat up probably the majority of this budget. But what we're opting to do is say, hey, let's buckle down and try to hold on and go with the hose and nozzles, because that's something we're using frequently. One of the reasons that we haven't done a lot with hose over the last years also is because when we order a new truck, typically we spec it with hose on it. And so, we've been proposing a ladder truck for the last 4 years, and it's been moved out, understandably. So that keeps moving that hose purchase out as well. If we were buying a new truck, I wouldn't be asking for hose, because we'd get 1,000 feet on that truck. We would use that to replace some of the old hose that we have. But since we're not able to do that at this particular time, then I think we're going to bite the bullet and buy some hose.
How many hoses do we have? I mean, I'm looking at this, all of this, and I see where there's 100-foot hose, and I see there's 25-foot hose.
Well, that's interesting, because here's what happens. It all starts at 100 feet. And our staff is pretty frugal, and they work pretty hard to preserve things and keep them operating. So what we do is, if a hose doesn't just fail when we test it, in other words, it may spring leaks, it may be out there spraying, we may cut that piece of hose down and make it a 50-foot section and cut the bad part out of it. And then we'll reattach the couplings. So it's all bought at typically 100 foot, but you may see some on there that's 25, you may see some that's 50.
So approximately how many hoses do we have?
We attempt to have 1,000 feet on every truck.
1,000 feet on every truck.
And that ties back into your insurance requirements.
Chief, approximately how much feet do you need to replace? Because a lot of it I see it did pass, but there's a few that I see that fail. So approximately, and you may not know that now, but
right now,
if you could get both, but minimize the amount of feet you have here.
Yeah, we were going to try to replace probably somewhere between 6 and 8 joints of 5-inch large diameter hose, and those are 100-foot joints.
Yeah, so about 600 feet.
About what does a 100-foot hose cost?
About $500 and some dollars, give or take. And we'll have a better number when we put that out for bid, obviously, but that's, a good number somewhere in 500 and some dollars.
So if you had to sacrifice, would you sacrifice the rescue equipment or the hose?
No, I hate to use that term sacrifice, because rescue equipment is one of those things that you need it when you need it. I think at this particular point, I would take my chances. Let's buy hose and nozzles. If we get in a jam and I absolutely just cannot make it till July 1, I'll come back before the board and explain it to you. But I want to try to stay within what you've appropriated. I could probably been easier to come back and ask for additional funding from contingency to buy hose, but we felt like we can kind of shuffle around. We're trying to do our part to stay within our overall budget.
So it's my understanding we're going to do away with the pagers and rescue equipment, just go with the hoses and nozzles, correct? To the end of the fiscal year.
I'm going to say yes, but if we can get the hose cheaper, I can get a better price on it, we may do a combination of both. We may try to do some pagers and do some hose, but I wanted to at least have some flexibility to be able to move around there. It'll depend on what the bids come back at. We'll put it out to all the different fire equipment companies, try to get the best price we possibly can for it. We've even got some places that we can eliminate shipping. I mean, there's some things we can do to massage that number. If we can get enough hose to carry us through and get our trucks back stocked where they need to be, then we may, if there's some money left, we may try to buy some pagers as well.
Yeah. My concern is just to get us through this fiscal year, and then we can just start, when we start about budgeting, we can budget for the other needed equipment at that time.
We're thinking on the same page. That's the reason I didn't want to come up here and ask you for additional funding. I just want to be able to move some around. That's all I'm asking to do.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve this request.
Second. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to discussion time regarding employees' compensation. And this is just going to be a general discussion time. It's actually, we don't have to vote or not vote on it, but I'd like to bring up my ideas on it and see if I can get some movement on this. For the department heads, right now, they are turned in for a 40-hour week consistently, 40 hours. And they are exempt from comp time, but in reality, they're tracking comp time on a piece of paper to write in their back pocket, basically. And if they come to this meeting and they stay here 3 hours, they basically give themselves time and a half, and they try to work that time out over the next couple of weeks or whatever they're going to do. And they're just balancing out internally among themselves. And their department heads, their time is flexible. I've spoken to both Tim Johnson and Patrick Harris, but not others, about, in my mind, I just put them on a straight salary. They're running the department. I'd pay them a flat rate of pay. It's not based on how many hours they work. It's a salary. And if they, if there's a giant fire one weekend and the fire chief is going to work all weekend, then he just works all weekend. But I do expect, and I imagine they'll do it, that salaried employees will try to take off sometime the following week to kind of catch themselves back up. But I would just let them track it. If it gets out of hand, I'd count the city manager to rein them in. But right now, we're trying to run a hybrid, kind of exempt from comp time, but they're still on an hourly wage, and they're still in effect taking that time off. It's a little confusing. It's very vague. I don't like vague things when it comes to payroll. I like things fixed. The next is, I'm not sure we can stand a payroll audit. If you turn somebody in for 40 hours a week, they're supposed to be working 40 hours a week. And that's not what's happening here. We're just, Greg Seiler, our finance guys, just turn them in for 40 hours a week each time automatically. They might work 50 one week and 30 next week, and they're just kind of internally keeping track of it. You might as well put them on salary, and I think you'll be more accurate. So I don't know if y'all want to discuss that idea some?
Well, I thought that was the whole purpose of the exempt versus the non-exempt concept under the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Well, exempt, and that's what I have, from an outsider looking in, and my interpretation is the same way, that if you're exempt from comp time, you effectively would be on salary, but that is not how they're doing it. They are on comp time, they're just tracking internally on a little piece of paper in their back pocket, basically. And they're taking off time as they see fit. Which if they were on salary and they worked 50 hours one week, or 60 hours one week, and it was a one-time exemption, then, they're working for me, they would probably sneak out an afternoon or two and go play golf and try to make it up. So, I can understand that.
So, point counterpoint, what's the difference from what we're talking about? I mean, they're not getting overtime now. They're tracking their own comp time. If we put them on some,
It's just an honesty of calling something what it is. I don't like the vagueness in anything. If they're on salary, put them on salary. If you're going to pay them the same.
They're not on salary now.
No, they're not, but they are effectively on salary. They're exempt from comp time.
If we put them on salary.
No, they're not on salary.
Sure they are.
No, they're not. We're talking about department heads.
They're on salary.
No, they're not.
Yes,
No, they're exempt from comp time.
they're on salary.
Are your department heads on salary?
Do they not get paid a salary?
They get paid the same thing every week, or?
Yes.
Well, then that's taken on salary.
Yes, I would agree with
Is
that.
what we budgeted, if it's $50,000 for employee X salary, is that what they get paid? Regardless if they
That's
work
right, I mean,
100 hours in a week, whatever, or 40 hours in a
Their
week.
salary does not fluctuate based on their hours.
Okay, so they're on a salary.
And from a technical standpoint, you typically refer to non-exempt employees. That's typically synonymous with hourly employees. Exempt employees is more synonymous with salary, but our book does not say, quote, salaried. So it's a term of art, basically.
Semantic.
Ours doesn't read that way.
I'm gonna point out two statements. And if I ask Greg Seiler, if I look at their payroll records, is it gonna show 40 hours a week? Yes. Yeah, because you write in 40 hours a week.
Yes, it may not always be considered 40 hours of work. It could be 32 hours of work, 8 hours of sick time. If that's the way it comes out. But assuming it took no sick time and holiday time, it would be there every day for 20 hours.
Right. If they,
No, you're turning in for the department heads the same number of hours every week.
Do department heads do timesheets?
They do complete an overall time sheet.
So it's accounted for?
Yes, whereby, and I can't speak for all departments, in our department now, you are an exempt employee. You put down 8 hours, whether you worked 7.5 or you worked 10 hours that day. You record 8 hours per day for all those.
but that's for your accounting software. Is that how you enter it into the system for your payroll, right? It has nothing to do with, I mean, it's just so your payroll works correctly, right?
Well,
Do the payroll records show an hourly rate?
The payroll system does break salary down into an hourly rate business.
But in essence,
I would just point out, we have had payroll issues in the past here. So outside of all the, let's say it was just semantics, John, it doesn't make any difference. This office will not survive a payroll audit by the North Carolina Department of Revenue. I can tell you that right now. You can't tell somebody, I'm paying them by the hour, but I just tell them to turn in the same number of hours all the time, whether they work 10 hours or 6 hours, I'm just going to pay for 8 hours. That's not how wages work. If they're on salary, they're on salary. If they can boss 3 or more people, or they're a salesman, they get on salary, they get a fixed rate of pay, it's a salary. Now, you can break the salary down as an hourly wage for tax purposes, but it's a salary. But we've had payroll issues here. You've got finance department revenue issues here that are not right. Things are not right in that. And we need to start the most basic things. If a guy makes $8 an hour or $10 or $20 an hour, and he works 6 hours, he gets paid for 6. If he works 7.5, he gets paid 7.5. If you got a department head and you're going to pay him the same amount every week, then you need to call it a salary and make it a flat salary and stop tracking hours.
Mayor, I got a couple things.
Or keeping a homemade comp time sheet, which is what they're doing.
We have in our personnel policy, it's called flexible work week. The department heads can define if they want to work 4 10s or 5 8s. It's based on a 80-hour work week. 2,080 hours a year divided by their salary would be their hourly rate. My concern is just doing the salary, it's expected for them to work the time to get the job done. I think our citizens, if they have office hours, they need to have defined hours so people can go in and meet with them, stuff like that. Personally, I would have a trouble making a decision saying that they're just salary and cutting out the record keeping based on some of the history.
One, the record keeping is wrong. They're just turning in
former
numbers.
employees, I must clarify.
I know, but I'm talking about today. Right now, the numbers are turned in are incorrect.
So you're telling me that they're turning in an 8-hour day, but they're not working an
We've
hour?
had previous employees pay themselves $20,000 of taxpayer money because it was comp time, and the whole town sat there and said it's okay for 4 years. And that's what we're trying to eliminate.
Well, the easiest way to eliminate issues is to clarify things clearly. There are plenty of cities, if I have a department head, if I can't trust them to work, if I've got to measure their hours and do all that kind of stuff, I probably should fire him and get another department head. If the guy's in charge, he's in charge. And I don't want to track his hours that close. But if we're going to turn in the same amount of pay each week, then call them salary and put it in other towns that pay their department heads on salary. No hourly wages, no pseudo comp time, no hybrid stuff. They just say, this is your pay. That seems fair to me. Now,
I agree with that, but what if a department head, well, just use for this past week example, I mean, we had department heads working late due to the snowstorm or extra hours. How are they compensated for that? I mean, obviously, yeah, they're getting a salary, we understand that, but are you asking the guy to make 80 hours a week? Is that what we're asking?
right now, and I don't know if Lynn's here, but and I don't know how he accounted for it.
Yeah, flexes time, is that what we're saying?
He flexes his time, and he counts as his time at 1.5 an overtime rate basis.
So we would allow.
But he writes it on a little piece of paper. He just tracks it himself. He doesn't turn it in to anybody, and then he just makes it up on his own. and your chief finance guy just turns in 40 hours a week, each week.
Well, that's the problem.
So you get paid an hour.
Well,
How do we,
you know, how, in the real world, Coca-Cola.
Or hour per hour.
Anybody work
And you may be really busy and somebody may quit and you work a lot.
The answer to that.
But it is more accurate to put them on a salary. And I've spoken to Patrick and Tim, I haven't spoken to everybody else, and both of them were, John, as long as my paycheck's the same, I don't care how you account for it. But on our end, from a financial accounting viewpoint, it's the correct way to do payroll.
I don't doubt that. My question is, though, my only concern is, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but if we're going to give them a salary of $50,000, what Councilman Moore said, how many hours a week are we requiring them to work? How many days a week? Is it 24/7? Is it?
That's the purpose of the timesheet, to keep them accountable.
Well, but we're saying we want to do away with the timesheet.
I would do away with all that. If you got a department head, if you can't trust him to run his department, I think the city manager should fire the guy and get somebody else to run it.
I don't disagree with that. I agree. So
We have to have a defined business hours and such as that. I mean, I just think throwing away timesheets is, I think they should follow the timesheet. If they work 8 hours a day, they put 8 hours on their timesheet. And then if they work 5 hours on a timesheet, put 3 hours of vacation, we have a record. How are we going to keep up with their vacation time if we just get rid of the timesheets?
Well, salaried people are paid the same every week.
But they're still going to accrue sick time and vacation time.
Well, vacation time is an effect on the salaried people. They get paid 52 weeks a year. They don't get paid for 54 or 56.
Well, if that's the case, they can just accumulate all their vacation time and they won't even ever take any off because they're going to be able to work when they
I
want.
don't think we allowed the accumulation of vacation time.
240 hours a year.
Past 3 years, I believe. 240 hours.
240.
The general theory behind exempt and non-exempt, and I'm coming from the private sector, I'm not coming from the government sector. The general theory on exempt and non-exempt is your exempt employees or more of your supervisory, professional type employees who have a job to do. And if it takes 50 hours one week to get it done, then so be it. You're not entitled to 15 hours for the 10 hours over you worked. By the same token, if you can take off, if you can do it in, say, 35 hours one week, that's okay too. And I think that's what John's saying. Is that an exempt employee is supposed to possess certain skills and abilities and do their job.
And I agree with that. That's my point I was trying to make when we go. If we do pay them salary, say if that was the scenario today, you got to give them that leeway if they did work. And Lenny Branches, I'm just going to use him because it happened last week. If he worked all night cleaning the streets, you can't expect a guy to come in the next day, or even he may, but you got to give him some time off to recoup. I mean, he's going to be able to, So I agree. If he works 50 hours this week and works 35 next week, it's okay.
Well, and I think some of the proposals that have been floating around from the committee is that we eliminate any entitlement to personal leave or comp time, whatever you want to call it, but we leave it in the discretion of the manager to deal with extraordinary circumstances, like you just mentioned. Or like John mentioned, if there's a...
Or tournaments, like the Parks and Rec have, SJBA.
Make them salaried, no program for time, but at the discretion of the city manager.
For extraordinary circumstances.
Is that a form of a motion?
How are we going to keep track of their hours and their vacation and sick time?
That's up to the department head.
Well, vacation time is accumulated by years of service and a formula based on that, not on the number of hours.
Okay, vacation.
I mean, we have a vacation policy. I mean, you can't just, you have to get approval of your supervisor to take vacation.
So my recommendation is I don't think it's wise for us to try to settle this tonight based off of the information. I mean, because I've just gotten something from John saying one thing, and then we've got an entire committee looking at this.
Who's the committee?
And Paul.
Okay, so why don't we have either a work session or something on this where we talk about it, but I'm not prepared to make a motion, or I would not be in favor of a motion, nor would I make one tonight based off of just the discussions that I've had tonight.
I threw it on here as discussion, it's not actually.
I mean, I see what you're saying, John. I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
We can give some feedback to Emery and Charles about, come back to us with something, but.
Perhaps we could talk to all the department heads and see what they think, and get their opinion.
But we have proposed wording,
We have a
right, that
committee
was submitted.
we have a committee that should come back to us with their recommendations, and that is not what I'm hearing tonight. And I would say that we would ask this committee that we appointed to come back with a firm, black and white recommendation, although I kind of see that in the minutes here.
It is.
Already, and I don't know if they did this, or they and Paul did this, or Paul did this, but I would say let's come back with the firm recommendation, guys, and then let's deal with it. I think you've heard everybody talk tonight, so get us something that'll cover the discussion about, what about vacation time, or what about, emergencies during the middle of the night and stuff like that. But come back with us with a proposal, and this is not as, in my opinion, it's not as difficult as we're making.
I agree. And my deal is to the committee. I'm an exempt employee where I work. Now, we work, I don't know how many hours a week, but there is some leeway there. If we work 16 hours in a day or 16 hours 2 days, and the third day, we're going to try to leave a little early. My concern is the employees, just making sure that we do keep that in mind. I understand their salary, and they need to do their job, and we expect them to be on the job, but you can't ask somebody to work 100 hours in a week and then just grin and bear it. I mean, that's not going to happen. So, and I'm not saying you're saying that, but I'm saying
That's the purpose of the committee.
yeah. And I'm not saying you're saying that. I guess I just want to make sure we keep it. We, like Perry said, come back with a black and white, something in black and white saying, hey, here's where we're at. And if they work 50 hours or 55 hours, take a half a day or something, whatever it may be.
That motion was made by Councilman Moore.
I don't think we actually need a motion right now. I think, I brought it for discussion because everybody's been kind of discussing it. I want to get it resolved. There's a few items I want to pick on. One of them is payroll and how we're paying people. And you guys can talk it over and bring it to us next month or whatever. We do that.
Next.
I appreciate the committee because this is a hot topic. So thank y'all for.
Well, it's a misunderstood topic.
Yeah, I mean, so I appreciate what y'all are doing.
I think we make it a whole lot more complicated. I mean, honestly, I mean, they're exempt employees and they're exempt employees. And getting a salary and forget comp time. It's just a whole lot worse.
All right. Well, let's move off of that subject.
Just because
then.
it's been
If everybody
because the abuse.
finished talking about that, all right.
And if everything works, just don't pay yourself.
Council members' comments. Is there any council member who'd like to make a comment?
I'd like to make one. I've had several individuals come up to me last week and praising the town for the work that was done during the snow. In fact, last night at the downtown development meeting, one of our local business owners, the Bistro, Mr. Millard Stallings wanted me to personally thank Lenny and his staff for the work that they did, going above and beyond. I know I was out Wednesday or Thursday morning, leaving about 7:30, and I saw the crews out scraping the sidewalks and so forth. I've had several emails from business owners downtown of how much they appreciated that. It was not only, I realized it was not only the Public Works Department, it was all departments involved, but a special thank you goes out to Lenny and your staff for the long hours that were put in. Not only that, I also want to mention the communications that went out. I think I had Facebook updates, emails, town chats. The website was updated within a day's time of the work that was being done and closures and so forth. So from a communication standpoint, Tim and Paul, I want to commend both of you and whoever else was involved in that. I want to commend you for the effort of getting the word out of what was being done. That's it, Mayor.
Good job.
I have a couple comments I'd like to make, Mayor. I'd like to just speak about some of the concerns that I've been presented from some of the citizens in the community. I think things are going well. However, there's always room for improvement. I would challenge the council, manager, the department heads to, in this upcoming budget year and from this point forward, to find ways that we can better improve our customer service. I've got numerous complaints from different various items that deal with interpersonal skills. I don't know what major issues are. However, I think that us as a town to be successful, we need to make sure that we're treating the citizens and our customers, whether it's somebody applying for a business, conditional use permit, somebody seeking help with their power bill, somebody that has a complaint about a dog. We need to make sure that we're focused on positive customer service. And I would like for us to develop a plan in a way that we can measure this. Perhaps some type of survey system. I don't have the answer to that, but that's something we can talk about in future discussions. But the department heads are challenged. We know that with the financial situations, but we're doing business. But I just want to make sure that we have that talk with our employees, that we are focused on positive customer service. Thank you.
Here, here.
To kind of piggyback on that, I know how you can do that is we were at our session 2 weeks ago. We had people doing surveys through their water bill, electric bill. I know in my years past, in the Parks and Rec, we did surveys throughout every sport, basically every year. That's a good tool there. I'm sure they could pass out some type of survey at events. Would that be a problem, Gary, if we got that? So we got assets to do that. So I think we need to just come up with what do you want on the survey? What do you want to hear? We can talk about that and get that form done. But I think we can definitely get it out there.
Yeah, I'm familiar. There's various things in each department that have ways of seeking that. I certainly think that we should have a way of measuring our customer service when possible in all departments.
Yeah, I agree. I think we use all our assets. I think we use the PNR at your events to pass out a general survey of the town customer service base, if that's acceptable to you guys. So, all right.
My only comment, Mayor, is after the last council meeting, we had a meeting at, is it Mitchell Memorial Baptist Church? For the Piedmont Natural Gas. I thought it was a good meeting, but Mr. Manager, if you could give us an update on that. And also, this is something we all need to stay vigilant on. This issue apparently has been around for 20 years. We need to stay on top of it and make sure that it is resolved so that we're not talking about it 20 years from now. Everybody seemed to be on board, gung-ho. I just hope we can all stay that way and make progress. And I hope some progress has already been made. I hope the schedule's been made to do the surveys. Paul, if you've got any information on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that's part of my report, actually, and you're exactly right. They hope to be through with the surveys, at least the first tier, by the first week, second week in March. So I think the weather hurt them a little bit, as it did everyone else, so I think that slid them down by a couple weeks. So they're pretty much on track. I think you said the meeting would take them at least 3 weeks to kind of get mobilized and get going, and I think the weather probably put them back a week or so because I think they have some issues too. So I think they're probably looking at the actual out in the field, by mid to late February, and then get them back by the first part of March.
Are they going to incorporate some of the residents to go with them? Good.
Yeah, I don't know about what that was because they seemed a little resistant to having the residents out there with them. I think, as I understood when we left the meeting and the conversation I had since then, was that they had contacts with some of those key residents who helped organize the meeting to kind of follow their lead to see where they could help. And those people, and I think Tony was one of them, agreed to help them with that.
Yeah, I know last Thursday there was supposed to have been a meeting in Thursday. Mr. Nixon with 2 representatives from the Piedmont Gas, but of course it got canceled because of the weather and stuff. But there is going to be some, immediate follow-up and, trying to get some, citizens involved also. So, but I don't know when they're going to reschedule that meeting that they missed last week.
Well, I think it'd be important to get some of the citizens involved. You may get more response and more participation from the homes over there, more timely response.
Also, Mr. Mayor, if I could add, East Smithfield lost a very important man, Mr. Cecil Vinson. So I would like to ask that, we can send our condolences to his wife and to his family. And he was lived in Belmont. I've known him all my life, but he was an integral part of East Smithfield. So I would ask that, we can send condolences to his family.
Mr. Mayor, just to add about the policy that was presented to us, I'd like to ask staff to add that whistleblowing policy to the employee handbook and online also as well. That was adopted in 2012, but is not.
Yes, sir. I think that was adopted about 2 months after we did our last update of the personnel policy. And I think the idea was next time, and we'll probably need to update the personnel policy, although it's up to date with our latest changes, just reissue the book. And we don't do it every year, but we'll probably do one this year so we can easily have that at that time.
If we can, maybe we could put up a little poster by your EOC calendar board or your
just a notice.
A notice and how to do it. Just a short brief.
Talking about the website, is that what you were talking about? One of the things I've had people ask me for is why we don't put our minutes of our town council meeting on our website on a monthly basis.
They are
up there.
They are up there.
They are?
Yeah, they're up there under the, I can't remember, is it clerk or is it?
Somebody asked me that today.
Yeah, it's under town clerk. Yeah, it's under town clerk. I think she has minutes and agendas on there.
And you can watch the meeting if you'd like.
Yep, they're on TV too, so,
Paul, are you gonna, I'm used to the manager speaking first and kind of cleaning up behind him, but are you going to talk about our conversation about Charles and I going to the Triangle J Council and some of the things that went on? Do you want me to do that? And also the Appearance Commission meeting that we had and some of the things going on in West Smithfield. Is that something you want me to talk about, or you plan to talk about that?
if you want to talk about the Triangle J, I can probably talk about the Appearance Commission.
Okay.
And I am making contact with, I believe it's Michael at the Triangle J on the water issue.
Charles Williams and I attended the Triangle J Council meeting last week, and I appreciate Charles for pushing me to go. I haven't done as good a job of going, and hopefully he'll get me going on a regular basis. But it was a very good meeting, and a couple of things that came out of it, I have had conversation since that time with Charles and with the city manager. One of the things that came up to us was an opportunity that the Triangle J Council has secured and worked on some grants, that there's an opportunity for us to perhaps convert some of our vehicles over to gas, to natural gas or LP, whatever it is. And there's an 80-20 grant that there's out there that is available, and they gave us examples of municipalities and private industry that has gone on to this grant that Triangle J is ramrodding. One of those was Raleigh. Raleigh converted 10 police cars last year, and the stats they showed us was that they saved $150,000 on those 10 police cars. Now, they were hot seat cars, which I learned meant that they were going 24/7. But that was one example of a dramatic savings that a municipality had. Raleigh plans to get 10 more. They've applied for a grant. That grant runs through sometime in March if we were interested. Stevens Sausage here in Johnson County has converted their vehicles to natural gas. I was not aware of that. They were one of the private industry that had gone on board with that. I haven't talked to Mike, but I have talked to Paul and actually had a conversation with two of our department heads, our chief of police and public works gentleman, about the possibility of getting a meeting set up with the lady that administers that. And I've talked with Paul, and I should have an email this week about some tentative dates she might be available to just explore that opportunity. Another thing that came out in our orientation session early in the meeting was a gentleman that handles their water. They have several people that handle water, but this particular gentleman works with the municipalities on some water issues, and I made contact with him, and I gave Paul his phone number, and basically J Council is an opportunity for us to garnish some assistance, and I would like to see us ask this gentleman to come down here to talk to us about our water treatment plant and some of the opportunities that he may see or have for the future of our water treatment plant, which I think Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all have had a meeting this week about the water treatment plant, and was involved in some other discussion with Councilman Scott and Councilman Williams the other evening in a kind of a round talk about our water treatment plant and some of the opportunities that might be available for us to increase our revenue there by more production. So I wanted to pass that on to the council and to the folks here that could be some opportunities coming from Triangle J Council. Thank you.
Thank you for going. It's a lot of work. Any other council people want to make any comments? I think our next to last item before we go into closed session is the town manager's report.
Mayor, just to follow up on Mr. Harris's comment, the other portion, I think, of some of his recent meetings have dealt with, if you remember the poster that Mr. Emler so kindly displayed for us, the roundabout, the circle area there. There's been some conversation about how to decorate that center area, which is got a diameter of, what's the diameter, Paul? How many feet? About 30 feet, so it's a good area. And there's been some general discussion about how to decorate, what to put in there, everything from a fountain to a statue to a bush to a piece of grass. And so I think there's a wide array of thought there. And I know Mr. Harris talked about it in his attendance at the Appearance Committee. And I think, really in fairness to the Appearance Committee, I think they want to do the right work and do the hard work and come up with a good idea and make a recommendation to the council. But I think, in fairness, the council probably needs to give the Appearance Committee a little bit of direction about what it's looking for, what its goal is there.
I'm looking for a motion to put a 20-foot tall statue of Perry Harris in the middle of that.
I'll make that motion. On the condition that Perry Harris pays for it.
You two holding hands, raising them.
And it's being removed every
Would not be an attractive thing.
I've got a motion. Any seconds?
Then he'll pay for it.
That has failed for lack of a second. All right.
Paul, I think I'm right in saying, Mr. Embler, you were there at the meeting. I think there was discussion about getting some type of cross-section panel together to talk about this. And correct me if I'm wrong, there was talk about perhaps the staff and a council member and people from your department and some folks from East Smithfield and perhaps somebody from the outlet center getting together to talk. We want to make sure that it's done properly, but we also want to make sure that it's with fiscal responsibility. And my personal opinion is that I think some type of nice lighted sign that says something about Smithfield would be appropriate, but anything over that I think would be too much. So I don't have a vision for what it is. I'm not real artsy, but one of the things that did come out, look at Shannon laughing at me, that the Appearance, the Appearance Commission had a desire perhaps to have some electric run to there and a water source run to the roundabout, not for a fountain, but in case we needed water. And that was one of the things that I think we talked about there, not for a fountain.
Whatever it is, it needs to.
If you're gonna put a 20-foot thing of me out there, I need a restroom too.
Well, whatever it is, it needs to withstand an 18-year-old kid hitting it at about 60 miles an hour on a Saturday night, because that roundabout is just dying for somebody.
Well, there are lots of roundabouts in Raleigh. Go down Hillsborough Street. Yeah. I mean, NC State campus, but I mean, look at what they've done.
I think Paul's just asking for, and I haven't had a real discussion with him about it, but is there any direction we want to give on this other than want it to be attractive?
We don't want to put any, a roundabout in Smithfield and Johnston County, that's going to be a pretty huge deal. And then you put something there to distract people even more.
Mayor, it may be appropriate.
Chief, you're going to be busy at that roundabout, so.
You mean like a hot dog stand, or?
I'm thinking of that statue of you. So it's going to
His statue's only going to be on the 6:30 every month.
We want to attract it.
Mayor, I have a statement I'd like to make. It may be appropriate we consider something that would, could generate its own money to pay for it. For example, if you had some type of memorial or something there, and people could purchase bricks and have their names engraved on them, stuff like that, to be a permanent, or possibly something to acknowledge your local heroes, public safety, fire, law enforcement, or...
And I hear that, but you got to understand, that's going to be a very busy place. So for someone to actually be able to view that and walk up to it would be very dangerous, in my opinion, from a
I'm
public
thinking like,
safety
All joke aside, Paul and I talked about it, and
welcome to Smith Vegas.
Yes.
the most you're going to get is some low
The
profile
project's already
signage
costing
on
us
there.
$9 million, plants and grass. Let's move on.
All right, let's move on to other stuff.
Mayor, if I can just briefly finish, just a few more things. I think you saw the press release that I emailed to you this morning. There was a pretty big announcement dealing with our electric services. Our Eastern agency, NICIMPA, are the initials. They made an announcement that they have entered into exclusive negotiations with Duke Energy Progress for the sale of the NICIMPA generation assets. Basically, that means they're going to try and negotiate the sale of their ownership interest in power plant facilities. That'd be several nuclear plants, the Brunswick and Harris in particular, and 2 coal plants that NICIMPA does not own outright, but has a percentage interest, a low percentage in fact, shared with basically Duke Energy Progress, who's the large majority owner of those facilities. Pretty big announcement. You know, we've talked over and over again about getting rid of the large debt for these generation assets that not only the town of Smithfield has, but we share with the 31 other municipalities that are in the generation power business. So basically, it's a look at selling those assets for a fair market value to Duke Energy. Relieve ourselves of that debt. I think it's pretty clear, discussion has been that it will not relieve all the debt. There will be some leftover debt that will have to be covered by the cities, depending on what their amount, their share of that debt load was to start with. So it's going to be a long process. Part of that agreement would be a long-term agreement to buy the power too, because you can't just sell the asset and not have an agreement to protect your rates. So a lot to go on there, and a lot of terms to be explored. But I think it's a good step, and I know it's something that many have been looking for a long time.
Paul, would you tell us NCEMPA? What does that stand for?
North Carolina Electric Municipal Power Agencies.
That's our agency.
That's right. And they call it the Eastern Agencies. That's us, basically. So, Electric Cities is this whole state. There's a Western Agency, and then there's the Eastern Agency, and NICIMPA is the Eastern Agency, and there's 32 member cities that make up that Eastern Agency.
So who's negotiating? Is it one person from every city? Is it the board of directors?
It's the board. It's the board of directors. That's right. The board of directors with NICIMPA. And of course, it will require unanimous consent of all 32 cities.
So that ain't gonna happen.
Well, I don't know.
It reduces our electric bills, certainly.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to.
Yeah, but you give us that.
It's kind of hard to say, if you can reduce your debt and you have a better outlook for the next 20 years. But I think it's going to take some steep negotiations, but so far so good.
Did you want to go to your financial reports?
No, sir. I just turned those in for review. If there's any questions, I'll try and address those. Only other quick things are, I think it was mentioned, we did have a water plant workout session last week. I think it went very well. It was a good session. I appreciate the mayor taking part in that. Had some good comments. We got a few things that are more day-to-day items just to clean up and improve. But I think it'll help operations, and also I think it'll help the staff morale and outlook down there. I think it's a good way to just improve things from a lot of standpoints, and I think we can do that for many departments, and that'll be a process we'll try to repeat where appropriate in some of our other departments. And On the crossings update, weather has delayed a lot of the pavement. My report, I think, describes it for you, but essentially, they're trying to finish the yellow portion of the project when the weather allows to complete that. The orange portion still, because of the DOT contractual nature of it and their rules, they will not attempt to pave that until after March 15th, I believe is their magic day, before they'll try and pave, following the winter. So that one will take a little bit longer, but that was the expected progress there. So they're trying to move forward with that. We are working on the reimbursement, both from NCDOT and the Highway Fund, and Greg has done a good job on that, trying to pull down some of those funds that were promised several years ago, now that we're nearing the completion of that project. So it's a good time right now. We're trying to wrap things up. And finally, Mayor, the last thing, again, I know we've already talked about the 6-month budget report for the departments, which I feel good about. And I know you got your audit report. I just want to make sure at the end of the day, I heard some different questions and comments and things from the auditor, but I think you got to put in perspective where we are and where we were. We'll have a more definitive meeting with the auditor, and we can ask him harder questions, and I've got a few for myself. But I think it's easier to take some of the numbers and say that's a negative. It's really not. If you want to look at our fund balance and our amount, going back just even 3 years ago, it was in the negative. We're plus 20% now. I heard it mentioned that that's just shifting numbers around. Well, it's really not. It's doing it the right way. And I think we've made large steps into doing it the proper way. There was some pain to suffer during that time frame. We had to pay some debts to the general fund from the utility funds. That's occurred to a large extent. I'm sure there'll be some other ones, but we're on the right track there. We can talk about the electric fund. Electric fund's extremely healthy. The number that she threw out this year, as the mayor pointed out, not last year, the 63% versus 120%, I'll be honest with you, it's the first time I've seen that in an audit in this town ever. So, it's a little disingenuous to me to say, well, you got to do better on that. I was like, well, where was that for the last 5 years? So again, we're trying to apparently hit a moving target at times. I'm looking at the cash, I'm looking at the reserves in our electric, which are good. I'm looking at our reserves in the water and sewer, which are extremely good. And I'm looking now at our reserves in the general fund. I think the county's general fund, again, not picking on the county, I think they're around 15-16%. And again, that was last year's numbers. If ours are at 20%, I don't see a lot of comment about the county being in dire straits. And I think we've got to change that tone of that conversation to say, all right, now we just got to keep going the right direction. I think we're doing that. So I hope when we go into that meeting with the auditor, we can get down to some of those numbers. Certainly, there's a lot of things we still have to do to keep moving that direction. But I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we've got a lot of things cleaned up and straightened out from the last 2 or 3 years that, again, weren't bad, but I think we've just got them back to where they need to be, and I feel good with the staff's work and what we've produced so far. That's all I have, man.
So, Paul, with that being said...
West Smithfield appearance.
Yeah, let me just comment on that.
West Smithfield, you were going to comment on the possible project in West Smithfield on those.
I'm sorry, the Highway 70?
Uh-huh.
Yes. Highway 70. Mr. Embler, our plan director, has been working hard with DOT, and in the west side of Smithfield, going from the bridge, going out of town, they've got what'd you call it, Paul, a tentative plan. It's a plan that's left here in the DOT office. It's been received very well by Tim Little, the district engineer. I never say it's a guaranteed amount, but he's promised that he will have funds for us to complete those improvements. And those improvements, by and large, are improvements to the right-of-way, hopefully both sides of Highway 70, to improve that with plantings, buffers. There will be some impact, I think, to some of the ingress, egress, some of the drives there, but I think most of us can acknowledge that it doesn't need to be 200 yards of a gravel road to get off Highway 70 into a business. So there will be some restrictions there if you look at it that way, but I guess the way we've viewed this, and the Appearance Committee certainly has, is that's one of our main corridors coming into town, and it needs to be spruced up a little bit, and we think that if we can do that with that vegetative improvement and buffers, that the whole area will look better, the property values in that area will improve, and we think we have some funds and a good plan. I want to commend Mr. Emler for doing that. He's worked with the appearance committee to put that together, and I know he talks to him almost weekly about moving that plan along, and I think we're in pretty good shape there. So there is some good news there.
Has that plan been shared with the council? We've seen that plan?
No.
Okay.
Well, I think there was a plan. I think there was a
has it-
plan from like 2 years ago that the council looked at. Is that right, Paul? Maybe older
No,
than
I
that.
don't think so. So this plan has not been shared with the council? And has this been moved forward to the state for approval? Okay. I would recommend that it be shared with the town council. And I'm not in disagreement that things need to be done. But quite frankly, the Appearance Commission does not have to answer to the property owners whose property and land may be taken. So I'd like for it to at least be shared with the council prior to be presented to the state. I'm not, like I said, I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, we can bring, right, this is just that right away, but we can bring the plan. I mean, Paul's got the plan. We can just bring it, share it with council so you can review it.
Okay.
And, we can
I was just basing it off your comment about the gravel drive getting to a business and so forth.
Right, and that's just the
Based on
drive that
comments
goes
on
up,
that.
you know, from the paved area across the right of way into the private owner's lot, basically.
Councilman Moore, I think, from what I understand, is trying to define the driveways, because if you notice, most of those road access is just a driveway across the whole thing. And for the most part, based on, I had a conversation with the engineer Little as well, it's more to improve the property, so.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing at all. I'm just saying,
You need to see it.
I'd just like to see the plan, you know, because ultimately, we will have to answer, regardless if it's in the right of way or not, we will still going to have to answer.
You're going to have to answer.
Okay? And I'm not discrediting the planning department or the appearance commission or anything by any means. I mean, it definitely needs to be done. I'm 100% in agreement with it. I'd just like to see it.
No, and that's fine. In fact, I mean, it's just under review to see if it's at all can be considered by DOT. And it's almost like a courtesy review period right now, but no, we definitely need to bring it back to council, no question.
All right, well, let's,
Mayor, can I have one more comment, please?
oh, yes, sir. All night. We'll stay here at 12
Okay,
o'clock.
good.
if we need to.
Paul, can I get you to hold that picture up again of this Smithfield crossing? This yellow road right here, thank you. This yellow road right here is costing the town of Smithfield, what, $5-6 million? Paul? Or is it the whole thing?
That's the whole project, really. The whole cost of the project would equal the approximately $1 million for.
Okay, that's costing, that's good, thank you. That's costing the taxpayers of this town $6-some million. I just want to point out, especially to you new council members, of the property benefited out there. Number one, this project is a benefit to Smithfield, but of the property benefited, the county of Johnston receives more property tax revenue than the town of Smithfield. Of the sales tax revenue generated in that whole area, the county of Johnston receives approximately 85 cents of every dollar. The remaining 15 cents of sales tax revenue generated is split between the municipalities based on population. There are municipalities in the county that receive more sales tax revenue out there than the town of Smithfield. Yet, Mr. Harris provides all the fire protection out there. Chief Scott provides all the police protection out there, and we as taxpayers are footing the bill for the entire project with the exception of some of the grants we've gotten. I think we need to consider going to the county commissioners. That's probably too late, I hope not. We need to go to them, and when we go forward with projects like that, we need to go to them early on beforehand to get help with these type projects. I think it's unfair for our taxpayers to foot the entire bill when so many other people.
We did, and
Did you?
it was thrown back in our face.
Okay.
Not only that, we brought them contracts, legal proposals of development grants that they could do. They wouldn't sign on any of them.
Not to mention the room tax.
So that was all I wanted to mention, because that's something we need to be proactive on, because this is costing a lot of money.
All right, does anybody else got anything to say?
Fine job, Mayor.
Well, we're not done yet. We're going to go into closed session, so I need a motion. We're going to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion, we go into closed session.
If I could, can I amend that motion?
He's going to say pursuant.
I'm going to amend the motion. We go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 and 6.
And who is going into closed session? The council?
Council and the manager. Council and manager only?
That is correct.
Second that motion. Second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.